The night is still. Oppressively still. On a remote volcanic rock in the middle of the South Atlantic, a man lies dying in a small, damp bedroom. The air is thick with the smell of vomit, tallow candles, and damp plaster. His body is swollen, his skin a pale, yellowish hue. He moans, drifting in and out of consciousness. Around his bed, a handful of loyal servants and a British doctor watch, their faces drawn in the candlelight. Suddenly, the dying man's eyes snap open. They are clear, piercing. With a shocking burst of strength, he grabs the wrist of the man closest to him. His voice is a ragged whisper, but it fills the silent room. I am going to die. I die before my time. Murdered by the English oligarchy and its hired assassin. His grip tightens. His words hang in the stagnant air. A direct accusation. Not of war, not of politics. Of murder. Then, the strength vanishes. He falls back onto the sweat-soaked pillow. The clock on the mantel ticks loudly, counting down the final moments of Napoleon Bonaparte, the once emperor of the French, the master of Europe. Now, a prisoner, a patient, a victim. This is not the death of a legend on a battlefield. This is a slow, mysterious unraveling in a cramped house at the end of the world. It is October 15th, 1816, and the long, dark mystery of what truly killed Napoleon Bonaparte is just beginning. We pull back, far back, from that stifling sick room. The screen fills with the violent grey waves of the Atlantic Ocean. Then, a speck appears. Saint Helena, a jagged, mist-shrouded island, 5 miles wide and 10 miles long. It is over 1,000 miles from the nearest continent. A perfect prison. In 1815, after his defeat at Waterloo, the British chose this impenetrable fortress to hold the man they called the General. They would not call him Emperor. To them, he was Boney, the ogre, and he needed to disappear. Napoleon arrives on the HMS Northumberland in October 1815. He steps onto the jetty at Jamestown, a narrow gulch between towering cliffs. He smells the brine of the sea, the peculiar scent of the native gumwood trees. He hears the relentless wind and the shouts of British soldiers. His world, which once stretched from Madrid to Moscow, has collapsed to this, a few square miles. His new home is Longwood House, a dilapidated, wind-whipped farmhouse perched on a high, barren plateau. It is perpetually damp. The walls weep with moisture. Mold creeps across furniture. Rats scuttle in the ceilings. His small court of followers, Counts Monthulin and Bertrand, their wives, a few valets, try to maintain imperial dignity. But despair is a constant companion. Napoleon spends his days dictating memoirs, walking the barren grounds under the watchful eyes of sentries, and battling a creeping lethargy. The British governor, Sir Hudson Lowe, is his jailer, a man of rigid, paranoid discipline. He and Napoleon engage in a petty, grinding war of protocol. Lowe reduces the budget, restricts gifts, insists on calling Napoleon general. The tension is a low, constant hum, like the island's wind. But a more sinister enemy is stirring inside Longwood House. Napoleon, a man of legendary vigor, begins to sicken. It starts subtly. Leg pains, swollen gums, lethargy, then more severe symptoms. Waves of abdominal pain so acute he doubles over. Fevers that leave him shivering under piles of blankets. His robust frame begins to swell, particularly his legs, which become pale and puffy. His personal physician, Dr. Francois Carlo Antomarchi, is baffled. The British doctors sent by Lowe diagnose hepatitis, a disease of the liver. They blame the damp climate, the poor food, the stress. Standard treatments are applied. Leeches, calomel, a mercury-laced purgative, a diet of bland, watery gruel. Each remedy seems to weaken him further. The mercury treatments, especially, are brutal. They cause salivation, tooth loss, and nerve damage. Napoleon himself suspects poison. He whispers it to Monthulin. He mentions it in letters that he knows will be read by Lowe. He points a trembling finger at the English wine provided to the household. But his accusations are seen as the paranoia of a defeated tyrant, a man unable to accept his own decline. Yet, the evidence of his body is undeniable. By early 1821, the decline is horrifying. The once dynamic emperor is a spectral figure. He is bloated, shuffling, his skin the color of old parchment. The pains are constant now. He retreats to his bedroom, a space dominated by a large campaign bed, a last echo of his military past. The room is cluttered with medicine bottles, basins, and damp towels. The smell is unforgettable: sickness, medicine, and the pervasive mildew of longwood. We focus on the details of his captivity: the daily delivery of supplies from Jamestown, the crates of wine from a specific merchant, the slow, monotonous rotation of guards, the isolation. Everyone in this tiny, strained community is a suspect: the loyal Monthlin, who manages the household stores; the British orderly, who handles the wine; the foreign doctors, with their archaic and often deadly remedies; even the very walls of Longwood, sweating with toxic arsenic from the green dye in the wallpaper. A key figure enters the scene: Louis Marchand, Napoleon's faithful valet. He is the witness to everything. He sleeps on a cot at the foot of the emperor's bed. He administers the medicines. He hears the midnight ravings, the groans of pain, the lucid moments of despair. His private journals will later become a sacred text for investigators. He records everything: the color of the vomit, the exact times of the pains, the emperor's dwindling appetite. In one entry, he notes Napoleon pushing away a glass of wine, muttering, "It tastes strange. It hurts me." The stage is set. The prisoner is failing. The jailer is suspicious. The doctors are incompetent or complicit. And swirling around it all is the unshakable, whispered question: is this a natural death, or is it something else? The spring of 1821 brings no renewal to Longwood. The winds howl with a bitter consistency, shaking the loose window panes. Inside, the routine of illness becomes a grim ritual. Napoleon is now largely confined to his bed. The man who commanded armies now commands only the attention of his servants, bringing him sips of barley water or adjusting his pillows. But his mind remains a formidable weapon. In his lucid intervals, between bouts of agony, he plans, not for escape, but for legacy. He dictates his will with meticulous, loyally precision. He leaves bequests to loyal soldiers, to family, even to the son of a man who once tried to assassinate him. He is constructing his own myth, sentence by sentence. Yet, woven into this document is a thread of profound suspicion. He writes, "I die before my time, murdered by the English oligarchy and its hired assassin." The accusation is no longer a feverish whisper in the dark. It is now etched in ink, destined for the eyes of the world. He also gives verbal instructions to Count Monthlin and Marchand. Concerning his body, he is specific, almost prescient. "I wish my ashes to rest on the banks of the Seine, among the French people I have loved so much." Then, a strange, urgent request: "After I am gone, I want you to have my stomach examined. I want you to tell my son how I died." A stomach examination. An autopsy. He is demanding evidence from beyond the grave. The final act begins in early May. The pain becomes a constant, rolling thunder in his abdomen. He can keep no food down. His body is grotesquely swollen, a condition known as ascites, where fluid leaks into the abdominal cavity. The doctors, Antimarchi, and the English physician Archibald Arnott, are helpless. They apply more hot poultices. They bleed him. They argue in hushed, tense voices at the foot of his bed. On May 4th, a violent storm batters the island. Thunderclaps shake Longwood to its foundations. Inside, by candlelight, Napoleon endures a crisis that mirrors the tempest outside. He slips into a delirium, muttering commands to phantom armies, calling for Josephine, his first wife. His loyal followers weep openly. The line between the once emperor and the dying man has fully dissolved. He rallies, briefly, On the 5th, the storm has passed, leaving an eerie calm. The sun breaks through the clouds, casting long, sharp shadows across the room. He speaks a few coherent sentences to Montholin. He receives last rites from a priest. His breathing grows shallow, irregular. At 5:49 in the evening, as the late afternoon light fades from the sky, Napoleon Bonaparte exhales a long, slow breath, and does not draw another. The silence that follows is immense. It is broken only by the soft sobbing of Michonde. The clock ticks on. The sentries outside continue their patrol, unaware. For a moment, the history of Europe is held in this damp, quiet room on a lost island. Then, the machinery of death engages. Governor Lowe is summoned. He arrives with a face of official solemnity, but his eyes are sharp, taking in every detail. Permission is given for an autopsy. It is performed the very next day in the small, crowded dining room of Longwood. The windows are opened wide, but the smell of death and disinfectant clings to the air. Napoleon's body is placed on the table. 5 British surgeons, along with antimachi, gather around. Their instruments gleam in the grey daylight. They begin. The scalp is cut, the skull sawed open. The brain is examined and found healthy, larger than average. Then they move to the torso. The incisions are made. The ribs are cut. The sight that greets them gives even the seasoned surgeons pause. The stomach is a horror. It is not merely diseased. It is a ravaged, ulcerated wreck. Dr. Thomas Short, the lead British surgeon, will later describe it in his report. A large, cancerous ulcer, the size of a fist, has eaten completely through the stomach wall. The ulcer is hardened, like leather. Around it, the tissue is inflamed and necrotic. The stomach is adhered to the liver, which is also enlarged and hardened. This is not the subtle work of a slow poison, some whisper. This is a violent, catastrophic disease. The surgeons look at each other. They have their answer, it seems. The official cause of death is declared carcinoma of the stomach, likely stemming from a chronic ulcer. A hereditary curse. Napoleon's own father died of stomach cancer. Case closed. A natural, if tragic, end. Governor Lowe ensures the report is precise, documented, and dispatched to London with all speed. The body is prepared for burial. Napoleon is dressed in the uniform of a colonel of the chasseurs of the guard. He is placed in a series of 4 coffins, one of tin, one of mahogany, 2 of lead. Like a Russian nesting doll, each layer sealing him away from the world. The funeral is a stark, military affair. The rain falls softly as the coffin is carried by British grenadiers to a secluded valley called Geranium Valley, now Seine Valley. The French entourage is outnumbered by red-coated soldiers. The local islanders watch from a distance, silent and curious. As the coffin is lowered into the grave, a salvo of cannon fire echoes through the hills, a final, ironic martial tribute from his captors. The earth is packed down. A simple slab is placed over the spot, with no name, only the inscription Napoleon. The British believe the story, and the man, are buried forever. But the autopsy report, intended to be the final word, is instead the opening argument in a 2-century-long mystery, because the details don't add up. Not for everyone. The French retinue, especially Montholin and Michonde, are deeply suspicious. They had lived with the symptoms day by day. The swelling of the body, the pain that migrated, the periods of improvement followed by sudden collapse. It did not match their idea of cancer. They remembered the wine. They remembered Napoleon's own accusations. And they remembered the strange behavior of some around them. Most importantly, they secured a relic. With the permission of the doctors, Napoleon's heart was removed, placed in a silver vase, and preserved in alcohol. It was a sacred token for the eventual return to France. But another, more macabre artifact was quietly taken. A lock of hair. And, according to some accounts, a piece of the stomach lining itself. These would become the crucial, silent witnesses for the prosecution in the trial yet to come. On Saint Helena, the story is officially over. The key players disperse. Lowe returns to England, his reputation forever tied to that of his famous prisoner. The French exiles eventually make their way back to Europe, carrying with them their grief, their memories, and their simmering conviction of foul play. For 2 decades, Napoleon sleeps in his anonymous grave. But in France, his legend does not die. It grows. The Napoleonic mystique becomes a powerful political force. And with it grows the whispered question, nurtured by the returning exiles, did the English murder him? The stage is now set for a much later act. For science. For obsession. For a detective story that would begin over a century later, when a determined Swedish dentist and a single, grey lock of hair would crack open the official history books and pour a shocking new possibility into the light. The world moved on. Europe reshaped itself. The Bourbon monarchy in France fell, replaced by a new king, Louis Philippe. And the ghost of Napoleon, safely buried under a willow tree on a distant rock, began to stir. In France, a movement grew, not just of nostalgia, but of national revival. They wanted their emperor back, not in spirit, in flesh. In 1840, a solemn state mission, led by Napoleon's own son, the Prince of Joinville, and including the now-aged Louis Marchand, sailed to Saint Helena aboard the frigate La Belle Poule. The return of the ashes. It was a political masterstroke, a reconciliation of France with its revolutionary past. But it was also a profoundly personal exhumation. The scene at Seine Valley is cinematic and eerie. Under a blazing tropical sun, French workmen, supervised by stone-faced officials and weeping veterans of the Grande Army, break the concrete slab. The earth is dug up. The coffins, one after another, are revealed. There is a moment of hushed, almost terrifying expectation. Has the body decayed? Has it been disturbed? The outermost coffins are pried open. Finally, the lead inner coffin is reached. The seals are broken. The lid is lifted. A collective gasp escapes the onlookers. Napoleon is perfectly preserved. The uniform of the chasseurs is crisp, the green fabric barely faded. The skin of his face is pale, waxy, but intact. The features are unmistakably his. It is as if he has been sleeping for 19 years. The tropical climate, the multiple layers of sealing, have created a remarkable state of preservation. For the French, it is a miracle, a sign of his divinity. For skeptics, it is a bizarre scientific anomaly. But for one man watching, it is something else, a silent testimony that something about his death was unnatural. Arsenic, some would later note, is a powerful preservative. The body is transferred with immense pomp to Paris and interred in a monumental tomb at Les Invalides. The mystery of his death, however, is not laid to rest. It is entombed with him, buried under tons of red porphyry, but very much alive in books, in whispers, in the hearts of conspiracy theorists. The 20th century dawns. The world is now one of science, of forensics, of atomic theory. The Napoleonic era feels like ancient history. Then, in the 1950s, a Swedish dentist and toxicologist named Sten Forschuffad picks up a book. It is the memoirs of Louis Marchand, published long after the valet's death. Forschuffad reads not as a historian, but as a clinical detective. And the symptoms Marchand describes in minute, daily detail: the swelling, the pain, the hot and cold flashes, the thirst, the skin discoloration, they do not read like cancer to him. They read like a textbook case of something else: chronic arsenic poisoning. Arsenic is the perfect murder weapon for the 19th century. It was readily available in many forms, from rat poison to cosmetic powders. Its symptoms: vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, peripheral neuropathy, the leg pains, skin darkening and swelling, mimic so many other diseases. And, administered in small, regular doses, it could kill slowly, appearing to be a wasting illness. It was notoriously difficult to detect. Until now. Forschuffad's mind races. If it was arsenic, evidence should remain. Hair. Human hair grows roughly 1 centimeter per month, and it incorporates trace elements from the body, including poisons, locking them in a chronological record. It is a biological ledger. He learns that locks of Napoleon's hair, cut by Michonde and others in the days and hours after his death, are treasured relics, scattered across the world in private collections and museums. They are time capsules. He begins a relentless quest. He tracks down descendants, collectors, historians. He obtains a single, precious lock. He sends it, and others he later acquires, to the most advanced forensic laboratories of the day, in Scotland and England. The technique is neutron activation analysis, a highly sensitive method that can detect minute traces of elements. The results, when they come back, are explosive. The hair samples show arsenic levels ranging from 10 to 40 parts per million. The normal level is less than 1. This is not just elevated, it is staggering. It is a level consistent with prolonged, systematic poisoning. The news breaks in 1961, causing a worldwide sensation. The cold case of the century is suddenly reopened. The dentist from Sweden has, with a single strand of hair, put the British Empire in the dock. But a shocking twist emerges from the data. The arsenic isn't just present. Its distribution along the hair shaft tells a story. The levels spike and fall. They are not constant. This suggests not a single massive dose, but repeated administrations over years. Periods of intense poisoning followed by periods of relative calm. The pattern is sinister. It points to a murderer living under the same roof, with daily access, patiently, methodically dosing their victim. The spotlight of suspicion now swings away from the abstract English oligarchy and illuminates the cramped, tense interiors of Longwood House. The list of suspects is small. The inner circle. Each with motive, each with opportunity. Suspect 1, the British. Governor Lowe, acting on orders from London. A rogue agent. Motive, to quietly eliminate a perpetual threat to European peace. But the method is flawed. Poisoning is messy, traceable, and politically catastrophic if discovered. The British wanted Napoleon contained, not martyred. Lowe's paranoia was about escape, not assassination. Furthermore, the arsenic in the hair predates his arrival on the island and continues after his departure. The British, as an official policy, seem unlikely. Suspect 2, the French. This is the darker, more intimate possibility. Count Charles Tristan de Montholon, the senior French courtier, the manager of the household stores, including the wine. He had constant, unsupervised access. His motives? Complex. He was deeply in debt. He was rumored to be having an affair with Napoleon's mistress, Albine de Montholon, his own wife. Was he acting for the restored Bourbon monarchy in Paris, who saw Napoleon as a living threat? Secret royalist correspondence has been hinted at, never proven. Montholon's behavior after Napoleon's death is curious. He inherits a large sum in the will. He returns to France and lives comfortably, despite his debts. He never advocates strongly for the poisoning theory, even when it emerges. Suspect 3, the environment. A modern counter-theory emerges. Could the arsenic have come from somewhere else? The answer is yes. Longwood's damp walls were covered in wallpaper dyed with Scheele's green, an arsenic-based pigment. Fungus growing in the damp paste could have metabolized this into a poisonous gas, arsine. The symptoms of low-level arsine gas poisoning share some similarities. And then there's the wine. To prevent spoilage on long sea voyages, it was common to add arsenic to the barrels. Could Napoleon have been inadvertently poisoning himself, sipping from his private stock over years? The debate explodes among historians, scientists, and armchair detectives. The environmental theory provides a plausible, non-murderous explanation. But the counter-arguments are strong. Why were others in the household not severely affected? Why did the symptoms follow a pattern of remission and relapse, suggesting controlled dosing, not constant environmental exposure? And most damningly, the concentration of arsenic in the hair is simply too high for ambient exposure. It points to ingestion. The mystery deepens, becoming a labyrinth of science and supposition. We are left with two haunting, incompatible truths: the definitive physical evidence of poison in his body, and the autopsy reports clear evidence of a ravaged, cancerous stomach. Which one killed him? Did the arsenic weaken him over years, making him susceptible to cancer? Did the cancer make him more vulnerable to the poison? Or was the arsenic itself, in massive doses, capable of causing stomach lesions that mimic cancer? The ghost in the machine is the diagnosis of 1821. The doctors saw an ulcerated stomach and called it cancer. But modern toxicology knows that chronic arsenic poisoning can cause exactly that: bleeding lesions, hardening of tissues, a stomach that looks like it has been through a war. Did the surgeons, with the medical knowledge of their time, mistake the effect for the cause? We are now in the realm of grim paradox. The autopsy, meant to provide closure, becomes the source of endless doubt. The body, preserved as if by a miracle, offers clues that science can read but not fully decipher. The case is cold, but the evidence is hot to the touch. The debate is a ghost that refuses to be exorcised. Each generation applies its new tools, its new biases, to the skeleton in the lead coffin. The late 20th and early 21st centuries bring more sophisticated analysis, but instead of clarity, they weave a denser, more tangled web. New hair samples surface from different periods of Napoleon's life, from his youth in Corsica, from the triumphant days after Austerlitz, from his first exile on Elba. The tests are run. The results are confounding. The arsenic levels are elevated in all of them. The Elba hair, cut in 1814, shows even higher concentrations than the Saint Helena samples. This changes everything. If he had arsenic in his system long before he set foot on Saint Helena, then the murder on the rock theory crumbles. Was he being poisoned for decades? By a vast, cross-European conspiracy that spanned his rise and fall? It seems ludicrous. The alternate explanation gains powerful traction. Napoleon was not murdered. He was a chronic, accidental arsenic consumer. The list of potential sources in his daily life is long and frighteningly mundane. The hair pomades and powders of the era often contained arsenic. The medicines he took for his various ailments almost certainly did. The water, stored in lead-lined tanks, could have leached other metals. And the wine, always the wine. To clarify and sweeten cheap wine, merchants would often add arsenic-laced chemicals. Napoleon, notoriously frugal with personal luxury but particular about his wine, may have been slowly killing himself with his own cellar, a victim of contemporary manufacturing and medicine. Yet, the proponents of murder are not silenced. They pivot. They argue that the baseline level of arsenic in everyone in the early 19th century was high. It was in the environment, the medicine, the makeup. But the spikes, the crucial, periodic surges found in the Saint Helena hair, those are the evidence of malevolent intent. Someone, they contend, was adding a significant extra dose to his system on specific occasions, pushing an already toxic body into crisis. The pattern is the crime. The focus narrows relentlessly to the final 6 years, to Longwood, to the handful of people who shared that purgatory. And one figure steps out of the shadows, his motives and opportunities laid bare by modern historical digging: Count Charles Tristan de Montholon. Montholon is an enigma. A former general with a checkered past, drowning in debt, he volunteers to follow his emperor into exile. Why? Loyalty is the official reason. But on Saint Helena, he assumes the role of household manager. He controls the wine cellar. He is often the one to bring Napoleon his evening glass of wine. In the chaotic final months, he supervises the preparation of the emperor's food and drink. After Napoleon's death, Montholon's life follows a curious trajectory. He receives the lion's share of the legacy in the will, 2 million francs. His own wife, Albine, had left the island earlier after rumors of her pregnancy by another man, and she separated from Montholon upon her return to Europe. Montholon returns to France, pays off his debts, lives well, and even serves as an ambassador under the subsequent monarchy. He writes memoirs that are vague, sometimes contradictory. Most tellingly, when the first rumors of poisoning began to circulate in the 1840s, spearheaded by other exiled companions, Montholon is silent. He does not champion the theory. He does not defend the British, either. He says nothing. For a man who claimed such devotion, his quietude is deafening. What was his motive? The oldest ones in the book: money and survival. Some historians posit that Montholin was a secret royalist agent, planted by the Bourbons to ensure Napoleon never returned. His reward would be the erasure of his debts and a place back in the good graces of the restored monarchy. The arsenic, brought to the island in a hollow ring or a sealed packet, was his tool. Administered in the wine, it would mimic a slow, wasting disease, the perfect silent assassination. But there is a flaw: the cancer, the undeniable, physical evidence of the ulcerated stomach found during the autopsy. This is the bedrock of the natural causes argument. How can murder by arsenic explain a cancerous growth? Modern toxicology provides a chilling possible answer. Chronic, high-level arsenic exposure is a known carcinogen. It can directly cause cancers of the skin, lung, bladder, and, critically, the liver and gastrointestinal tract. The very lesions the 1821 surgeons called serous carcinoma of the stomach, a hard, leathery cancer, could have been caused by the arsenic. In this scenario, the poison is not an alternative to cancer. It is the cause of the cancer. Montholin, or another poisoner, would not have been administering a lethal dose to kill in weeks. They would have been administering a carcinogenic dose to kill in years, crafting an illness that would appear entirely natural to the doctors of the age. This theory is the most haunting of all. It suggests a murder of exquisite, patient cruelty, a murder that weaponized the victim's own body against him, growing the very evidence that would later be used to rule the death natural. It is a crime that hides its mechanism in plain sight, in the pathology report itself. We are left with a mosaic of possibilities, each piece sharp enough to draw blood. Possibility 1, the accidental victim. Napoleon, like everyone of his time, was awash in arsenic from his environment and habits. A combination of bad medicine, toxic wine, and genetic predisposition led to a catastrophic stomach cancer. His paranoia about poison was just that, the understandable fear of a powerless prisoner. The preserved body was a fluke of chemistry and sealing. The mystery is a modern invention, a conspiracy theory born from our inability to accept the mundane death of a great man. Possibility 2, the murdered emperor. A killer, likely within his inner circle, methodically poisoned him with arsenic over years. The poison caused his debilitating symptoms, weakened his constitution, and ultimately induced the stomach cancer that finished him. The autopsy saw the end result, not the root cause. The murderer walked away, enriched and unpunished, his crime hidden behind a diagnosis of disease. Possibility 3, the murderous environment. The real killer was Longwood House itself. The damp, arsenic-laden air he breathed day and night, the toxic fumes from the wallpaper, the lead in the water, the tainted wine, all conspired in a perfect storm of environmental poisoning. In this version, his captors are still guilty, not of active murder, but of criminal negligence, of housing him in a beautiful, toxic tomb. There is no smoking gun, only a lock of grey hair, a 200-year-old pathology report, and a stomach that was preserved not in alcohol, but in controversy. The final scene returns us to the interior, not of Longwood, but of Les Invalides in Paris. The camera drifts through the hushed, dimly lit rotunda. The black and white marble floor gleams. In the center, sunk into the earth, lies the monumental red porphyry sarcophagus. It is immense, heavy, final. Visitors file past, their whispers echoing in the vast space. They look down at the tomb of an emperor. But what is inside? A hero? A tyrant? A cancer victim? A poisoned man? History has rendered its verdict on his life. But on his death, it has only delivered a question mark carved in stone. The camera lingers on the serene, polished surface of the sarcophagus. Our narrator's voice returns, low and close. The mystery endures because it is the perfect historical crime. It offers evidence for every conclusion and proof for none. We have the weapon, arsenic. We have the opportunity, a closed circle on a remote island. We have motives, political, financial, personal. We even have a confession of sorts, from the victim himself with his dying breath. But we lack the one thing that closes any case: certainty. The light in the dome shifts, a beam illuminating the tomb. Perhaps that is the ultimate fate of a man who reshaped the world. He cannot be allowed a simple end. His death, like his life, must be a battlefield, a contested ground where history, science, and legend wage endless war. The autopsy report and the hair sample are the two opposing standards flying over that field. And between them, in the silence of his tomb, lies the truth that Napoleon took with him. A truth that, like the man himself, refuses to rest in peace.